Greetings, dear listener. Subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new scary stories and support me with a like. Enjoy listening.
Humanity has been afraid of the dark since the day it was born. We have acquired electric light, portable flashlights, candles. We are not afraid of the dark. We call the fear of the unknown that hides in the darkness scotophobia. But deep inside each of us, our distant ancestor still lives, cowering in horror around a fire in a cave, waiting in fear for the coming of the saving dawn. They come in the night. The night shift is a special aspect of life. We are easy to recognize by the bags under our eyes, by our shuffling gait, by the direction in which we move when you go to work or study. On the subway, we always meet you halfway. Night work is a difficult test for the body. Anyone who doesn't believe it can look into any medical encyclopedia and see what such a violation of biorhythms leads to. Sleep disturbances, loss of muscle tone, excess weight, hormonal imbalance, deterioration of intellectual activity, a general decline of the body. According to the laws of most countries, we are required to pay extra for harmful activities, a measly 5%, sometimes more, sometimes less. And really, why are we needed at all? Night workers of hotels, eateries, subways, cleaners, salespeople, police officers, duty officers, security guards, telephone operators, and many others. Who needs us? We serve ourselves after all. Is it really impossible to clean the streets and train stations early in the morning? Of course you can. But then you will see that the contents of the garbage bags are moving, that the contents of buckets of dirty water somehow smell red, that cleaners do not risk handling some items with their hands, even with gloves. I'm not talking about syringes and cigarette butts generously littering any public place. I'm talking about strange boxes, about jewelry made of darkened silver, about a coat whose lining is stained with blood, about documents lost by unlucky owners. Or is this all that remains of them? Wallets, attractively shiny with plump sides and whispering right into your ear, "Take it." Notes with strange contents posted on the walls. They got an easy job. I work in a hostel. My job is to keep out those who come in the night. No, not prostitutes and drug addicts, not thieves and rowdies. You will understand what I'm talking about when you see the night wanderers. They are different. Seductive beauties who lean their impressive busts onto the counter and ask in a slightly hoarse half-whisper if I will let them spend the night. Homeless-looking people without age, interested in the availability of free places. Young men portraying belated, daring revelers. Clusters of Asians hung with outdated technology and backpacks the size of themselves. Teenagers trying to sneak through a common door with others. No one will pass me by. No matter how much this baby now tries to drown my gaze in her cleavage, I will be adamant. Don't shove printouts of other people's reservations in my face. I know they are fake. Don't sigh or clutch your heart. Don't pretend to be tired. I know you just woke up and that you have no heart. I recognize them in any shell. An empty, dead gaze directed into the abyss within them, hands shaking with impatience, animal features emerging through the human shell. The smell of decay coming from your jaws, gaping in impatience, reveals to me your true nature. Without an invitation, you are nothing, and you won't get it from me. Sorry, sir, your credit card is not working. Of course not, because you found it in a trash heap and it's not in your name. No, sorry, a driver's license is not enough. Sorry, there are only rooms left for 300 euros per night. I'm sorry, but we are fully booked. No, unfortunately, there are no free places left. You will sigh, sob. You will literally scratch your nails along my counter, and I, drenched in cold sweat, will blindly look at the monitor. These creatures sit in the lobby, trying to connect to Wi-Fi using long, outdated, and non-working phone models. They will clumsily smoke paper at the entrance. They will try to book a room using a switched-off laptop. They will try to speak to me in different languages. Swear that you were late for a train, a plane, a boat, a pedicab. I will politely apologize and say that, unfortunately, I can't help. Sometimes they find their way in. A silly young girl captivated by a handsome student from another country who crawled out from under a nearby bridge. A cheerful tourist blinded by lust who drags into his room a model-looking girl born from his own shadow and an advertising poster in the subway. Two friends who met in a bar. One complained that he had nowhere to spend the night, and the second distinguished himself with generosity and offered his room to the creature that crawled out of the mirror behind the bar. We write these out in advance. Nothing can be done anymore. The invitation has been received, and even if we stop him at the entrance, he will still get into the room. The next morning, the maid will replenish our collection of forgotten things with the remains of the unlucky tourist's luggage. They usually take the rest with them, although sometimes the unfortunate are lucky and we find them dead from cardiac arrest. And this is great luck, believe me. When we go around, the stakes go up. The creatures are already on our territory, with someone's short-sighted permission. And then in one hand we take a heavy flashlight with almost scorchingly bright LEDs, in the hope that we will catch something in the flashlight beam before it notices us. And in our back pocket we have a little book, mostly consisting of copies of someone's illegible handwriting. Sometimes the book is updated with our notes in the margins. Sometimes everything is very simple. If you hear crying from the women's toilet, under no circumstances call out to anyone, and of course, do not open the door. Just turn off the light and lock it. Sometimes it's more difficult when you see someone slowly stomping down the corridor and leaning against the doors as if listening. Then you need to overtake him along the fire escape and open the door to it. He will leave on his own, but will not be able to return. And sometimes, when you hear laughter from an empty room, it's better to just run. We are here. We are in the night, so as not to offend you. We will stop the swing that swings by itself at night in the yard. It is we who will drive away the one who knocks on doors at night, asking to be let in. We will remove the mind-numbing video from the internet portal. It is we who will destroy the life-taking videotape. We will return a pet to its grave that has begun to behave strangely. We will not allow sound to be born without a source. This is us checking to see if the doors leading to nowhere are locked. But, the price we pay for your safety is too high. We're getting tired. We're tired of working at night. And what will you do when there is no one to guard your sleep? Who will switch shifts with me? I'm not a security guard. I'm not going to catch all the punks who are trying to get into the hostel. From a conversation between the night porter and the hostel manager. Listen, this guy is really sneaky. He won't let you in even if you put a bill in his mouth. Yes, it would be much easier with a banknote, but in my pockets I only had wads of tobacco and a lighter. Meanwhile, the blonde's neckline and her magnificent figure did not let go of her gaze and did not even allow her to admit the thought that the evening was over. My body palpably demanded the continuation of the banquet. The denim jacket was short enough to show off her butt, and the skirt was sheer enough to show her white panties. No, really. Some idiot behind the counter isn't going to stop me. Let's go, I answered confidently. And they didn't do anything like that. The hostel was quite miserable. Dirty yellow walls, a bar filled with beer, and young people with no money like me. A plump guy sat behind the counter and selflessly played on his iPhone. And he should be the one to stop me? As we silently approached the door leading to the stairs, trying to get lost in the crowd, a lazy voice came from behind us. "Your keys, please?" Yeah, I ran away. And I really took off running. At full speed, I rushed down the stairs leading down. The fat man apparently followed me. Well, no, moron. It won't work. I texted Kaylee to wait for me in the room. Although, what the hell number? 40 people in one room. I heard heavy breathing on the stairs and hurried to hide in the closet, Surrounded by mops and buckets, I had to sit for about 5 minutes while the receptionist clumsily stomped up and down the corridor and shouted warnings in 3 languages. When I was about to leave, I received an SMS from a hidden number on my phone. "Don't go out yet. He will now sit on top of the cameras. I'll wait in my underwear." Wow, a promising start. All that remains is not to fall asleep in this dark, dusty room. Oh, damn it. How long have I been here? Almost 2 hours. The phone stared at me expressively with the numbers 3 o'clock. Am I really asleep after all? We arrived at 1:30. So, okay, the main thing is that she doesn't fall asleep. Carefully opening the door, I looked around. The corridor was completely empty, not a sound. The hostel seemed to have died out. I walked up to the door to dormitory A and texted Kaylee. "I'm at the door. Open it." Of course, she was already asleep. I knocked on the door, hoping that at least someone would come, but of course, there was no answer. The call also did not yield anything. Only some noise was heard in the receiver. The signal did not pass through. In despair, almost burying the idea of a wonderful night, I went out into the hostel courtyard to smoke my last cigarette. Under the hissing sound of burning paper, I caught sight of a fire escape leading straight to the wide open windows of the dormitory. Without even finishing my cigarette, I happily rolled down the stairs and jumped out the window. Well, it's not surprising that no one opened the door for me. The barracks were completely empty. Looks like someone's having some damn luck today. There was only one person lying on the farthest bed. Having briefly glanced at the things lying next to the bed, I made sure that it was Kaylee in front of me. We met her in a bar. She was drinking Cosmopolitan and I was drinking beer stolen from an inattentive American. She turned out to be from Britain, like me. Having treated her to a couple of cocktails with my last money and having listened to all the crap that men in a bar are forced to listen to from the chicks they peck, I invited her to retire. And the devil pulled her to stay in this shitty hostel. There's room for 40 people. But even if all 80 were here, it wouldn't bother me. Quietly undressing, I dived under the blanket with her. Damn, how cold she was, like a fish. The only thing missing was chips to complete the picture. There was a sweet whisper. "I was waiting for you, honey." First, cold arms embraced me, and then she turned to me, and I saw rough, as if hewn from wood, features that melted before my eyes, gray skin. The creature raised its head, leaving its blonde hair on the pillow. I tried to jump up, but an iron grip pinned me to the creature, whose face was spreading into fibers like boiled meat, and mouths were appearing from under the gray skin. Mouths instead of eyes, mouths instead of cheeks, mouths instead of foreheads, dirty, rotten teeth, the smell of rotten meat and thin, greedy, earthworm-like tongues. They echoed each other in many voices with the same laziness in the voice of the overweight receptionist. "Your keys, please? Your keys, please? Your keys, please? I don't have the keys. Let go." I exploded in hysterics. I struggled, tried to escape, squirmed, and countless mouths approached my face. The night porter was just arranging the dishes for breakfast when a heartbreaking scream was heard. The young man winced, as if the guests would not be awakened. Having carefully placed a stack of plates, the receptionist went to the reception. Opening the shift log, he found his own entry from 2 hours ago. Penetration into the dormitory. A guy of about 25, a red jacket. One guy came to the hotel and went to the reception to check in. The girl at the reception gave him the key and said that on the way to his room there was a door without a number, which was locked, and no one was allowed to enter it. In particular, no one should look into this room under any circumstances. The guy followed her advice and went straight to his room, without looking anywhere, and went to bed. But his curiosity did not give him rest, and the next evening he walked along the corridor to the door of the room without a number and pulled the handle. Naturally, it was closed. He leaned over and looked inside through the wide keyhole. Cold air blew from the room, chilling his eyes. He saw a hotel room like his, and in the corner sat a woman whose skin was completely white. She leaned her head against the wall and her face was directed away from the door. He looked a little more and decided to knock on the door out of curiosity, but changed his mind. This decision saved his life. He walked away from the door and returned to his room. The next day he returned to this door and looked through the keyhole again, but this time he saw nothing. Everything was red. He couldn't see anything beyond the solid red color. Probably the inhabitants of the room realized that I was spying on them and covered the keyhole with something red, he thought. He decided to consult the girl at the reception about this. She sighed and asked, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The guy admitted that yes, and she told him, "Okay, if so, then I'll tell you what the point is. A long time ago, a man killed his wife in that room, and her ghost has been living there ever since. But these people were not ordinary. They were completely white and their eyes were a deep bloody color. I suggest you listen to my next story. It will be the second one I write. I hope you like it. The incident happened to me in 2000. I often have to move cars, as this is a very, very good thing. Earning money allows you to feel good, in monetary terms, of course. But there are also plenty of nuances. Long trips along night roads, sometimes deserted. It's sometimes eerie to the point of trembling in the most secret parts of the soul. You're driving, and the enormous length of the route seems to be escorting you into the unknown depths of our mysterious planet. Pop music was playing on the radio, as always. Rain was pouring outside the window of the brand new 9. It was a gloomy autumn evening. It was cold outside. I turned on the heater, and slowly I covered sections of the breathless road. My eyes were seriously strained. I really wanted to sleep, and the weather was like this. Stay at home, wrapped in a blanket, and drink some tea. I intended to stop at a nearby motel to take a nap and then continue on my way home in the morning. After maybe 2 or even 3 kilometers, I saw a bright sign that read Moonlight Road Hotel. At that moment, it was a salvation for me. Sleep was already just throwing me into an uncontrollable coma. From fatigue, I began to talk to myself. Surprisingly, I noticed only one car in the parking lot, which made me depressed, thinking that they were just inspecting this building or some kind of check. Basically, there is a lot of transport near night hotels, even taking into account the truck drivers who are probably guests in such places. But I decided to try my luck. Maybe I'll get lucky. Entering the lobby, I smiled. The motel really worked. A young guy stood at the table and read some magazine. The shape on it reminded me of an old black and white Kinso. I haven't seen anything like this for a long time. He raised his head. Huge bags under his eyes were clearly visible on his face. Plus, his enormous hair gave him a very funny look. He started saying something like, "You're lucky. We just have one free room left, they say. In this weather, the motel is full, like a tavern with drunks." What he said made me laugh. I saw that there was only one car outside. Well, I probably would have said the same thing in his place because without PR, there will be no business. He handed me a key with license plate number 31. Having paid for one night, I took the key and went to look for my room. I didn't have time to look for long. Somehow, quickly finding the one I needed, I happily headed towards it. It was clean inside, although the furniture and wallpaper were probably from the 70s. But, alas, their condition was perfect. A small room containing a bed, opposite which was a colorful old TV. There was also a shower room and a toilet. On the wall next to the bed there was a picture of a boy smiling and pointing at the house. There was a second picture near the TV, but this one bothered me. It depicted a family of 5 people. All of them were smiling, only, as I understood the head of the family, the bearded man was somehow angry and looked so intently that his gaze pierced right through. I couldn't wait any longer. I fell off my feet and jumped straight onto the bed. The eyes began to slowly close, but I couldn't sleep. The vacuum cleaner turned on behind the wall. I looked at my watch. It said 12 exactly. Grunting angrily, I got up and went to the window. The rain was pouring down terribly, and the lightning was so strong that every flash made me twisted. Meanwhile, movement began behind the wall, but it was as if someone was fighting. With another flash, the light went out. Now I could freely hear dull blows and some quiet groans. Outside the window opposite my room, meanwhile, some movement began. I guessed that the motel workers were rushing around and apologizing for the trouble they had caused. So I sat down on the bed. Outside the window, in the direction of the door, some body walked. Without getting up, I shouted from my seat, "I'm fine, thank you for your concern." But there was no effect. On the other side of the door, they started turning the handle and breaking into the door. Once again, I loudly repeated my phrase, but they began to break into my room even more diligently. Involuntarily getting up, I headed towards the door and became like a stone, already centimeters away from it. Behind the door, breathing was clearly heard, but not human, but like that of a huge dog. I became even more scared at the moment when, according to my guesses, a second body approached and began to whisper something to the other. Speech, like language, I could not determine. But I couldn't help but remember the movie Vacancy for a Sacrifice. Behind the wall, meanwhile, I heard the screams of a woman, maybe a girl. At that moment, I didn't care. The blows on the door had already begun, and with such force, it seemed to me as if the door would burst right in the middle. I ran to the bathroom. The screams behind the wall continued, and horror overwhelmed me. I was already beginning to lose consciousness. I don't know where I got the strength, but I pulled myself together. There was a small window in the toilet. It opened without any effort on my part. It was a problem to squeeze into it, but I still managed. Just at the moment when my body collapsed on the rainy asphalt, the door seemed to be knocked down. I was in no hurry to run, because I was very afraid for my life. But the car was not so far away. I slowly crawled near the wall, but then I still ran because I realized that within seconds those who were behind the door would find me. Without any effort, I started the car. And abruptly, as in films about racers, he flew out of the parking lot and headed into the empty darkness of the night highway. At that moment, I was already wondering why those who broke into my room did not use a flashlight. This scared me even more. I don't know with what strength I overcame sleep, but in the morning I was already in my city. First of all, when I came to my friend, I drank 150 grams of vodka. Then I told him the story. And here comes the transition of the narrator. In short, grab it as you go. This story made me laugh a lot. He was a fan of writing fairy tales. And even if such a thing had happened, it was most likely some kind of joke on the part of either the visitors or the workers themselves. Although I involuntarily remembered one legend, which I told him then. In short, it says, even after the 70s, or maybe even in the 80s, there was a fable about a ghostly hotel. Well, supposedly a crazy hotel administrator was practicing magic and either went crazy or caused some kind of devilry. Different sources have different stories, but the truth is the same. 10 people died at the motel that night, and all the deaths were different, from strokes to stabbings and bites. But I remind you that this is just a legend. The TV was on and the news was on. It was then that my friend lost consciousness, just at the moment where the correspondent was talking about how a woman and her 7-year-old daughter were found dead on the side of the highway. What I was able to find out after he came to his senses was that it seemed that this particular car was parked in the parking lot of that motel. He was also talking about the screams of a woman that he heard. Having sent him home, I told him that he had imagined everything and it was just a joke. He lived with his wife. There were no children. In the morning, my friend's wife called me and asked if I had seen him, to which I replied that he had gone home, as if still early in the morning. Later, a friend's car was found 2 blocks from his house. Everything was clean in the car. No signs of struggle or anything like that. But on the driver's seat, there was a mechanical clock that showed 12 o'clock. The hotel where I work as an administrator is located in a picturesque suburb. This is a rather old stone building of 3 floors, but on the 3rd floor there is an attic where all sorts of old rubbish lies. There are not many rooms. They are all made in an antique style. In general, a very beautiful place. That evening I came to work. We work in shifts. My replacement handed over all matters to me and informed me that the guests had all moved out. It was quite strange, before there was always someone in the hotel. In my memory, it had never been empty. In the evening, the cleaning lady went home. The security guard called back and said that he was sick and would not be able to go to work. It turned out that I would have to spend the night in the hotel alone. And it's not that it scared me at that moment, but nevertheless I felt uneasy. I called all my friends, but no one could get out of the house to be with me. At 11 o'clock in the evening, I walked around the territory, checked all the entrances and exits. She closed the front and back entrances and went to her staff room. This is a fairly large room, a studio with its own shower and toilet. There is a security area in one corner. There are monitors from surveillance cameras located around the perimeter of the building, as well as on both floors in the corridors. There are no cameras in the rooms for obvious reasons. I took my book and sat down on the sofa by the window to wait for the guests. I must say that the rooms have telephones for contacting the administrator, and on my desk there was a multi-line telephone where the numbers were signed. I read for about an hour, delving into the interesting plot of the book. The time had already passed midnight and there were still no guests. There was complete silence at the Strashno.com hotel. Suddenly I heard a child crying. What nonsense! Where can a child come from here? Maybe I'm already buggy? I carefully walked out into the 1st floor corridor. The sound clearly came from somewhere above. If we talk about my condition at that moment, my legs were soft like cotton wool, and goosebumps ran down the back of my head. I thought that the cat somehow got into the living room and got stuck somewhere. I went up to the 2nd floor. The sound was still coming from above. I was struck by the thought that the sound was coming from the attic on the 3rd floor. There is not even a light installed there, but you still have to go. Suddenly the cat needs help. I consoled myself with the thought of an animal, but to be honest, this voice didn't sound like meowing, more like crying. Such quiet sobs. I went to the utility room to get a lantern and went upstairs. Gathering my Strashno.com strength into a fist, I unlocked the door and entered the room. The crying, now more like a rustling and creaking sound, came from the far corner of the attic. I aimed the flashlight there, and I didn't see anything. Telling myself not to be afraid, I headed there, and I saw an old record player near the beam. The record was spinning in it, and it was the one that made these sounds because the needle did not move in a circle as it should, but either fell into place or jumped off the record in different places. I felt just indescribably scared, just wild. There's someone here. Someone started this device? I began to circle the entire attic with a lantern. It seems like no one... But how? I personally just unlocked the door to the 3rd floor. Rushing back, I tripped and sprawled on the dirty floor. She jumped up, rushed to the door, slammed it, and pressed her back against it. What is Strashno.com? ? My God, I whispered a prayer, asking that everything would work out. She went down to her room and locked the door from the inside. What to do? Call the police? The replacement? To my husband? Thoughts were racing in my head. Suddenly the silence was broken by the ringing of the phone. I rushed to him. Finally! At least someone is calling. Running up to the table, I froze in my tracks. The phone was ringing, yes, but the call was from inside the hotel, from room 8, as indicated by the light burning opposite the number. She carefully picked up the phone. Silence. I hung up on the phone and rushed to the monitors from the surveillance cameras. So, the 2nd floor, The door to room 8 was slightly open, although I definitely closed everything when I walked around. The windows are closed. There is no draft. The air conditioners are on. I really felt like I was going gray. I was overcome with incredible horror. I sat like that, staring at the monitor for about an hour, maybe 1.5. Nothing happened. I didn't notice at what moment the sound strashno.com coming from the attic stopped. The phone didn't ring. I picked up the phone, deciding to call my husband after all, but there was no signal. I took my mobile phone. There was no antenna either. With some kind of indifference, I turned my gaze to the monitor of the cameras on the second floor and saw that the door to room 8 had closed by itself, but then it opened slightly in the 7th. I strained all my vision, trying to see at least a shadow from someone, but I saw nothing. But the wooden staircase from the second floor to the first creaked. My teeth were knocking out fractions. Someone was coming down. I checked if my door was closed, propped the handle with a chair, and, hugging my knees, froze in the chair, looking intently at the crack of light under the door. Nothing happened. The adrenaline in my blood went through the roof. A little more and I would have rushed to climb out the window.